Today we're going to be making jalapeno cheddar focaccia. So first we're starting with some bread flour, some salt, granulated sugar, and then some instant yeast. And then I have some olive oil, and then some warm water. I'll then be taking my dough whisk and start mixing it all together. And the goal of mixing this is to ensure that there's no more dry patches or lumps left. So I switched over to a scraper and we can see that there are no more dry patches left. So now we're going to cover the bowl for about 15 minutes to let the dough rest. So it's been 15 minutes of this resting, and so I'm going to take a wet hand and we're going to be performing some folds. And so I'm going to grab a piece of the dough and then tuck it on top of itself. And I'm going to be doing that in a rotating motion while keeping my hand wet. So now we're going to cover for another 15 minutes and we're going to do the process again 3 more times. And we can see that as I'm turning it, it's become much stronger and the dough has smoothed out significantly. So now we're going to cover our bowl and we're going to put it in a warm place and let it rise for about 1.5 hours. So it's been about an hour and a half. The dough has doubled in size. It's a bit puffy and you can also see some air bubbles throughout it. Now we're going to prepare our pan. So I have some olive oil. I'll brush the sides and the bottom. Taking some folded up parchment paper, we're going to add it to the bottom, and this will help remove the focaccia once it's fully baked. Now with our prepared pan, we're going to add in the focaccia dough. And just to make sure the dough is fully covered in oil, I'm going to flip it over. So now with it fully flipped over and covered in oil, we're going to let it rise again for another hour. All right, so it's been about an hour and a half, so now we're on the final part of preparing our dough. First, we can see that the focaccia has started to fill the corners, but also there's this nice jiggle to it once I shake it, so we know that it's officially ready. We're now going to be dimpling the dough, so I'm going to be adding some oil to my fingers. And then taking my hands, I'm going to be creating these dimple motions. And so as I'm working through it, we want to make sure we're not deflating it, so we're being really gentle with it. Next, I'm just going to drizzle some olive oil on top, and now we'll work on the jalapeno cheddar topping. I decided to go with pickled jalapenos. I think it'd have a better flavor, but you can definitely use either or. And I'm just going to add them throughout. Next, I'm going to be grating on some cheddar cheese, but you can definitely use whatever cheese you would like. Finally, I'm just going to add a little bit of salt on top. So I have the oven set to 475, so this will go in there for about 15 to 18 minutes. This is fresh out of the oven, but we're not done baking it yet. So first thing, I'm going to use the sides and remove it from the pan. And so now with the oven off, I'm going to return this to the oven for about 5 to 7 minutes. All right, so this is fresh out of the oven, so before I want to cut into it, we're going to let it cool for a little bit. And as always, for the best part, I get to eat a slice. I was going back and forth about adding the jalapenos and the cheddar inside of the loaf as well, but I'm really happy I just went with it as a topping. I'm excited to make a sandwich with this, but also this is so versatile. You can do sweet, you can add caramelized onions, make it into a cinnamon roll if you would like. I'll be sure to include the ingredients in my caption and the full recipe in my Substack.